Hyperreal. That came about, I hadn't done a solo album since Solo, which is more classical kind of based, and that was 15 years ago I think. Took about 2 years to record because I was still gigging, playing with various bands and teaching at the time. It was all recorded in my little studio in Watford that I rented at the time. I would basically teach all day and then record all night and then go to sleep in the van, because I still live in a van. Lived in a car for 10 years and now lived in a van for 4.5. By the book, backseat bedroom. There you go. So the idea was, what can one musician, one laptop and one guitar do in the 21st century? As for the bass, I completely cheated. So I borrowed a bass from Mr. Richard Kirshner, who's the bass player in the Lee Aaron band at the time. So I kind of cheated. It was kind of one bass, one guitar, one laptop, one musician. So Trigger Point just came about from messing about with a really weird chord progression. Quite a lot of the time, if I'm coming up with stuff, I can't physically play it, so I'll slow it down and then I'll do like a MIDI guitar track, and then I'll speed it up to the speed that I want to hear it, learn it, and then record it, and then that's what you get. So that original melody I couldn't play at all. So there you go. Trigger Point was meant to also be a kind of demonstration of guitar and MIDI guitar, because it was going to be the first track, and MIDI guitar features quite heavily in what I do. I thought I'd do a lot of synth work on it as well. Witch Hunt came about. I played it years ago in a jazz trio that I was in, and really enjoyed it. And the chorus always felt too short for me, so I doubled it. Hope you don't mind, Mr. Wayne Shorter. It's a Wayne Shorter track, and yes, it's kind of one of my favourite Wayne Shorter tracks. I don't know why. It's got this kind of creeping, kind of broody feel to it. And what I did was I kind of mixed in the Wayne Shorter with the Zamanol Syndicate. I'm a huge fan of the Zamanol Syndicate, and the way that he uses rhythm, especially African rhythms and stuff like that. So I decided to use a kind of weird African rhythm that's, if memory serves me correctly, I think it's 3/4, 6/8 and 4/4 together. Yeah, again, features guitar synth quite heavily, but I wanted more of a bluesy, simple approach to the solo and to the actual playing, and to play about with that kind of African groove thing. With that track, I was kind of channeling, African witch doctors, that kind of thing. The title Witch Hunt. It's probably more about McCarthyism or something like that. The McCarthy witch hunt trials or whatever they're called. But with the African influence, it kind of had that kind of dancey element to it. The track 25 was quite interesting, because that was written, well, between you and me, it's over 25 years ago. It's about 26 years ago, 27 years ago. But it was written when I was about 18, I think. I'd just come out of music college, and I'd just got my first 4-track, and I can't remember where the idea came from, the initial idea, but it was, I just wanted to do something that had some simple chords to it, and then see how I could pull apart simple chords and use simple techniques and ideas, but make it not sound simple, if that makes sense. I found my old 4-track and put a few of my tracks onto the computer, and then put them into Logic, and did a demo, and just quite liked it. I like the tune of it. So I wanted something that was fairly straight ahead for the album. So I decided it'd be quite a good laugh if I could sounds terrible, if I could play with my 18-year-old self. And that's what I did. So what you'll hear on the first part of the track is you'll hear me playing when I was 18, And then what you hear in the latter half of the track, the second solo, is me playing at 30 something. Alright, 30 something and a lot of months. Alright, 40 something. There you go. The Birth of Time. Now there's one. I mentioned the band before, Curfew, that I'm playing for. We were going to do another album or an EP about 2 years ago, and I wrote a few tracks for it, and this was one of them. And the idea for this was, I'd seen a guy on Wogan, which is a British TV show, a talk show, years and years ago, and it was this guy who he started a campaign to decimalize time. Ever since I saw it, it's something that mathematically you can't really do. It's really difficult to do, but I kind of like the idea, seeing as everything else is decimalised. And if you don't understand how the difference between decimalisation and non-decimalisation, if you look at old British money and you try and understand how many sheep were in a shilling and how many shillings were in a groat or a goat or something, and how many of them were in the doodah, I can't get my head around it. It's 12s and 24s and then 3s, and then on a Wednesday you've got to take it and half it by 1, and then it's a sixpence, and then it's not a sixpence, it's actually an old 5p. Nobody knows. Decimalisation was much easier. 10 plus 10 is 20. I can do that. So decimalising time would be brilliant, but impossible. I thought about it long and hard and I can't do it. But I thought about a song that was decimalised. So I tried to write a song in 10/8, and everything that I wrote ended up being in 5. So I just thought, to hell with it. So originally this was called The Decimalisation of Time, and now it's called The Birth of Time. I kind of gave it a kind of slight Indian bent, and all the when I was improvising along with the track, it came out more Indian anyway. Whenever you're counting the actual rhythm, I'd always use conical, so it'd be takita taka takita taka takita taka takita taka. So Po-Face Fusion, there's a bit of a story behind that one. I originally recorded that I got a phone call from my mate Owen Edwards, who's a fantastic guitar player and one of the top guitar teachers in the country, and he was running a thing called Guitar Idol at the time, and when he started it, he didn't have enough people that had applied for it, and he just was phoning up all his mates saying, "Can you do a video? Can you do a video, mate?" So I went, aye. He went, "Yeah, give us some of your best chops and none of that Po-Face Fusion." So I thought, okay. So of course I wrote a kind of fusion track and called it Po-Faced Fusion. I actually came up with the idea for it. I tried loads and loads of tunes, and over the course of a week nothing was happening. And there's in Watford there's an Asda near the studio, and lots of my tunes are written from the end of the car park. Whenever I go to the supermarket, I park at the far end of a car park, and then that walk into the actual supermarket, I'll write a tune or come up with a tune. I've done about 5 or 6 tunes that way, believe it or not, and one of the tunes that I came up with was Po-Face Fusion. I came up with a riff on the car park and then wrote the whole song as I went around and did my shopping, and then came out, sing all my little ideas into my phone, record them there, and then that's it. And that's how the tune was born. And hopefully it's not too po-faced for Owen, but yeah, ask him, see what he thinks of it. So Nickjitsu versus Godzilla. Now there's a story. That track started life. I got a phone call one night from a mate of mine, fabulous drummer, Richard Spooner, Doc Spoons. He was about to do a whole load of masterclasses, and he wanted a heavy metal track. So he phoned me up and he said, "Can you write me a heavy metal track?" I said, when do you need it? He said, tomorrow. So yeah, I did it. I stayed up all night, didn't go to sleep, and wrote it, recorded it, gave him it the next day. That was the end of that. And I think he used it for a wee while, and then I quite liked it, and I started using it in my shows and masterclasses and stuff at Wembley, when we used to do the Wembley guitar shows, all these kind of things, and people quite liked it. It was actually one of the tracks that planted the seed of doing this album. Along with Po Face Fusion, Owen Edwards had also always said to me, what people want to hear from me is like a straight ahead rock album. Hyperreal is as straight ahead and as rocky as I get, really. So the next stage of the tune was, I thought I'd use it on the album, and it's been on the back burner for years, and I was never happy with it. So I thought I'll completely change it. It sounded very warlike to me, so I went for down the whole war aspect. And I can't remember what it was. I think I was mucking about with drum kits and came out with this taiko drum sound, and then improvised a kind of taiko thing. And then that was it. It kind of spawned the whole idea of the samurai and the Japanese kind of idea. I'm quite closely linked to Jiu-Jitsu and Aikido as martial arts. I did them for over 20 years. And I've got swords and all that kind of thing, so it was quite easy for me to fit into that mentality of a samurai fighting Godzilla. What I did was I reimagined the whole thing and recomposed it using the Hirajoshi and incense scales, and wrote out all the modes. I spent about must have been about 6 weeks studying taiko drums and studying Japanese music in general. I had to invent quite a few new guitar techniques. All the things that sound like kotos aren't actually synth guitar, that's actually real guitar. But I invented a way of playing that's right on the bridge to get that kind of sound. And yeah, I used loads of effects. I used my Sonus volume pedal quite a lot because it's got this kind of sound in it. With the volume itself, so you can get this kind of monster tone when you mix that in with a whammy bar. You've got the lead guitar, you've got rhythm guitars, you've got the bass, and you've got the strings all doing different things at different times, so that was quite hard to mix. And yeah, as to who wins, Nickjitsu or Godzilla, you'll have to listen to the track and make up your own mind. One Night was a track that I wrote one night, in one night. I worked at a college at the time, and I had to learn how to use a digital 4-track. And that particular night I'd split up with my Italian girlfriend, and was a bit gutted. So I went and got a couple of bottles of wine from the local co-op, and set about trying to learn how to use this digital. It's a digital 8-track actually. It was a Boss BR8 or something like that. And cut a long story short, I wrote this track one night, and I really liked it. It was full of like really. I was quite hurt at the time, quite angry, and you can hear that in the track. And it was kind of like a thought process of what a good time we'd had, and then how miserable I was. It's kind of that mixed together. And on the original track, I had two weird things. I had a slide, not a slide guitar. I hate slide guitar because I can't make it sound good. But it's got a fretless guitar on it, and you hear the fretless guitar from the original BR8 recording in the new track. And also because I wasn't playing synth. I had synth guitars at the time, but I think I was too drunk to put it together. So I ended up playing chords and just blowing on the strings, and then using a flanger and a delay to create a pad in the background. And that's what you hear on the background of the track One Night. It's that's from the original recording. It's also got the Rivera on the solo for all those big screamy notes and all the feedback and stuff. One Night. That's the ballad of the album. Every album needs like a slow ballady kind of track. Statistician was written for Rob Williams, who wanted me to do some videos for him to demonstrate his guitars. And yeah, I must have ummed and ahed for, don't know, 4 nanoseconds, and then I said yes. So what I did was I did a video where I talk about the guitars, and I also did a video where I wrote a tune for each guitar. And quite literally, you pick up the guitar and it just starts playing itself. You just start coming out with stuff. And the thing that I came out with for the guitar, it was a Strat, classic Strat that he gave me to demo. And yeah, that riff popped out, and I wrote the track in about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that. It's on a YouTube video somewhere. Just look for Rob Williams' classic Strat, and that's the original tune of Statistician. So the reason I didn't want to put that version on the album is that I wanted to play it again and spend a bit more time on it and try and get a few different things in there. And also on the YouTube version, because I'm playing a white Strat, I play a lot of licks that I associate with Strat players. So I'm playing like, especially at the end, I think I play Eric Johnson, Malmsteen and Blackmore, I think, at the very end. So I wanted something that was a bit more me. So yeah, I recomposed it a little bit, changed the drums around, changed a little bit of the structure, put a bass solo in it, because I love slap bass, but I'm crap at it, absolutely crap at it. And to invent a kind of different, I used a lot of flamenco techniques to get that Victor Wooten sound. Huge Victor Wooten fan, so I wanted to get something more like he'd do, and also play just something a little bit funkier, so just to be a bit different from the rest of the album, really. So it's got that, it's got a nice little synth solo on it. Again, that's the Tone 2 Icarus synth, and yeah, that's the story of Statistician. So the uncommon chord, see if you can guess who that's about. That's wholly dedicated to Alan Holdsworth. I remember the day that I found out that he'd passed on, and I was at a girlfriend's house, another Italian girlfriend, and we just split up. And I got a text from my mate saying that what had happened to Alan Holdsworth, and she had guitars in her house, and I immediately just picked up a guitar and played the first few chords of the uncommon chord. Didn't even think about it, just played it, and that was it. Then went to the pub, had a few pints in Alan's honour, and then a couple of days later sat down with those chords. I remembered them, and basically came up with the whole tune. And I did a YouTube video on it where I played it as my little tribute to Alan, my humble little tribute. He's one of these guys that, for me, he's an untouchable. He's just way beyond my understanding and anything I could do. So I thought that the most basic tribute I could do was just do a wee chord thing for him. And basically that's what's on the album. The album version has a string quartet on there as well, doing a little bit of counterpointy, stringy, poncy nonsense. So if you want to hear some Alan Holdsworth style chords with some poncy nonsense in the background, listen to the uncommon chord. Dick's Dream of Electric Sheep. Yeah. First of all, the title isn't Dick's Dream of Electric Sheep, it's Dick's Dream of Electric Sheep. If you know the movie Blade Runner, then you'll know that the original title was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and it was written by Philip K. Dick. The title is just a play on words of that, Philip K. Dick's Dream of Electric Sheep. I went to see Scott Henderson in London, and totally blew me away. Later on, when I went back to my van, living in a van at the time, still am, went back to the van, I just picked up my guitar and played all night, And one of the little riffs that I came out with was the riff in Dick Stream of Electric Sheep. The beginning of the track is totally organic and is basically, albeit it's guitar synth and all that, but everybody's playing on it. It's all played in, there's no on the grid kind of playing on it. And as it goes through the track, especially towards the end, everything goes completely on the grid and turns into synthetic instruments. And the whole time there's that push-pull kind of thing going on between the synthetic instruments and the real instruments. And there's a big kind of synth and guitar battle in the middle, that kind of thing. And it's meant to signify, you know, Deckard's fight with, is he a replicant? It's as if he took the Vogt-Kampff test. The original title for the track was going to be the Vogt-Kampff test, and I just thought that if I wrote it down, it doesn't look like Vogt-Kampff or Vogt-Kampff, whatever it is, and therein lies the problem. How do you pronounce it? So I'm a big believer that you should be able to pronounce a song title, unless you're writing in Gaelic. So yeah, Dick Stream of Electric Sheep. Do you think he's an android? It kind of tells you at the end. It goes all the way from organic kind of human playing to an 8-bit version of the song right at the very, very end. So see what you think. Is Deckard a replicant? Over to you. Yeah, never have a title that people can't pronounce. Ushkatahe. Ushkatahe is Gaelic, Scots Gaelic for River Tay. And this tune was just something that popped into my head as I was walking along by the River Tay a couple of years ago, and just had this melody pop in my head. And when it came time to do the album, I realised that I always get accused of writing really complex music. And it's not intentional, it's not something I do to be clever, it's just what comes out. It's perfectly natural for me to write stuff. And I don't think of music in terms of easy and complex. It just is. That quite a lot of the time a piece of music should just write itself and it will go the way that it wants to go. And if you've got a story in your head, as I often do when I do these things, then it will go the path it wants to go. The music will tell you what it wants. And however, this time I wanted to write something that was mega simple. So I thought about writing something with just one note. So the beginning of the track, the beginning of the melody, starts with just one note, a D. If you're good at playing D, you can play this track. And then it kind of goes on. It's one of the weird tracks because it uses a technique where I use a hairband to get a lot of the harmonics. But it was a really difficult track to do because I had to play really loud. All the feedback and all the long notes. I played in a tiny room, probably about half the size of your smallest cupboard, and I had to put gaffer tape on the walls and on the ceiling and on the floor to where I could lean down and get, on certain notes, they'd feed back at certain angles at certain points in the room. So I'd have written above F sharp would be that way, D would be that way, D up an octave would be up there, all that kind of thing. It was quite a tricky track to actually do, and I think it took a few hours to get that actual guitar performance and the tone that I wanted and everything like that. The beginning of the track, the seashore and the seagulls, that's played on guitar. It's all guitar, every note of it. Mad Studio Twister. That was originally a track that was released on an EP with an old band I was in, an old trio called Mains Jam. Stuart Milne, brilliant Scottish drummer from Dundee, and John O'Heal, very excellent bass player from, he's in Norfolk now, but he was living in Scotland at the time. We got a little trio together and we were doing high energy fusion. That was the kind of tagline of what we did. And one of the tracks on the EP that was always quite popular was Mad Studio Twister. Some of you will be too young to know this, but we used to record in recording studios with lots of faders, and you'd have to do everything in real time. you're mixing down to tape in those days. You couldn't automate anything. There was no automated desks. You had to, if you wanted to turn the guitar up at a certain point, you had to move the fader up. So this song had so many things that we had to do with it that everybody had a number of tasks during the song. So, you know, just before the chorus on the second bar, I had to press that button, and then two bars later, you had to move that fader up to wherever the chronograph pencil was, the little white pencil thing, and then you had to turn it down again a bar later, and then press that, and then do that. And it took about 4 attempts to get that right. That's how we used to do things, kiddies. So it was like a game of Twister. We had arms and legs everywhere because I was pressing pedals and stuff, and you know, somebody had their leg up on the thing, and things were all over the shop, and it was like a game of Twister. And that was the only track that was, it didn't have a name, so we named it Mad Studio Twister. So roll on a few years, and I was doing I was at a music show in Birmingham, and I met one of my old students, and from when I used to teach in Dundee in the early mid 90s, we were trying out guitars together, and he sat down and he played Mad Studio Twister to me. I thought, that's really cool. I thought I can't remember how to play that. And so it planted a little seed, and then I was in Dundee, must have been about a year later or 2 years later, and just heard this random kid playing it in a shop, and went up and spoke to him, and it turns out that his uncle had bought the album, and he was learning to play guitar, and he really liked the album. But it sowed the seed. So when I was looking for stuff, I remember I was in the King's Head in Tring, and thinking about stuff that I was going to put on the album, and I thought, that might be quite a cool one, because it always proves quite popular with the guitar players. So once I'd done the demo, I was listening to the demo, and by complete accident, I happened to be in the same pub again, the King's Head in Tring, and I was listening to my demo of Mad Studio Twister, and then for some reason I put on a track by a band called Shugal Nifty, and it was the Tabernori, I think the track was, and it had this it goes on to this thing called Le Reel de Voyageur, and I just thought that would be perfect at the end of Mad Studio Twister, and that's where that kind of little Kaylee thing comes from at the end. Hyperreal. The hyperreality is where the conscious mind can't distinguish between something that's real and something that's not. I'm sure it's a artistic expression, you know, postmodernism, or, you know, post spaghetti hoops or whatever they do in art. But it's something that I was quite interested in, and it was an apt name for the album, seeing as if you didn't know it was all guitar, would you know it was all guitar? It would have been called Hyperreality, but I just preferred the name Hyperreal. It sounded more pretentious, really. So at the moment it's only released on Bandcamp, iTunes, and things that you have to pay for. But you can listen to Hyperreal for free if you go to the Bandcamp website and type in Nickjitsu Hyperreal. I'm Nickjitsu, the album's called Hyperreal, and yeah, enjoy.